Hey you guys, what's up? Welcome back. Super happy to have you here. I wanted to talk about Saturn. Saturn is really a major influence for us through 2020 because he's leaving his home sign or his sign of rulership in Capricorn and making his way into Aquarius, which is also a sign of rulership for him. The focus of Saturn in Aquarius is so different than how it's been in Capricorn, though. Saturn in Capricorn has been focused on our place in society, our external worlds, and really how we are, where we fit. As he makes his way into Aquarius, he's going to shift that focus in a much more outward sense. It's more innovative, it's more explorative. We're going to have this opportunity to really discover new heights. But it's going to be affecting us all in very different ways. So I wanted to go through every single sign, okay? And this is going to be ascending sign specific. So whatever your rising sign is, I want you to click that link down below. If you have no clue, right? If you don't know your time of birth or something, that's okay. You can still use your sun or moon sign, but I am just going to tell you that your ascending sign will be much more specific and geared toward you. So let's take a look at, I made this little graphic. Let's go ahead and take a look at Saturn as he makes his way throughout the course of 2020 and really what is he doing. So again, I'm not an artist, but just so you can kind of get an idea, we have Saturn moving from Capricorn into Aquarius. He's going to be crossing that line on March 21st. Now, when you really think about it, March 21st is kind of far away from where we are, which means Saturn has really slowed down. And when planets, any planet really, hits the 28th and 29th degree, especially of a sign, it really amps up that energy of that sign. So this is going to be really amped up Capricorn energy. So 29 degrees, he's going to be sitting there, and then he's going to be crossing over into Aquarius on March 21st. He will continue forward to about 1 degree 57, so about 2 degrees of Aquarius, and then on May 11th, he's going to start going backwards. On July 1st, he will transit back into Capricorn, giving an added emphasis of that 29th degree of Capricorn, and he'll be moving backwards until September 29th. He'll move back again, and then on December 17th, he will finally be rested and moving into his new sign, which is very, very late in the year, but all through 2021, he will be resting happily and doing what he needs to do in Aquarius up until 2023. Now, right after Saturn re-enters into Aquarius, we have an amazing event, and you can see the little symbols at the end of this little squiggly here, which is the symbol of Saturn and the symbol of Jupiter. On December 21st, we have a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, which is a huge deal. It only happens once every 20 years, and it actually has this big kind of macro cycle that goes on. Saturn and Jupiter are connecting in the sky in a specific element for periods of 200 years at a time. So for 200 years, Saturn and Jupiter have been coming together in the sky in Earth signs. So this Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, it's really poetic that it's happening in Aquarius because it's the age of Aquarius. We're making our way in. We're seeing massive, massive, massive shifts in technology in just the last 100 years. And now we have this Aquarian, pushing the stopwatch, right? It's going to boom, push the stopwatch, Aquarian energy, which is so explorative. And it's really going to set the tone in our technology growth, which we already know is coming because we've been seeing it for so long. It's going to really change and reshape the way we communicate with others, our own intelligence, and how we operate as a humanity. So massive, massive shifts going to be happening, and it will be impacting us as individuals in a really beautiful way as well. So, like I said, go ahead, find your ascending sign in the link below. We're going to go through each sign and talk about kind of what 2020 is really all going to be about and what we can expect moving forward up until 2023 when Saturn then moves into Pisces. Okay, so see you in a sec. Now for you guys, Saturn has been in such an incredible place. I mean, 10th house, right? Since 2017. Saturn enters into Capricorn, and there's all this emphasis on your career. There's emphasis on going out and making money and being a productive member of society and getting your life in order and really taking yourself to this whole new kind of level. And yet, I don't know that every Aries has really experienced the true benefit of this. And the only reason why you haven't, okay, now, if you're one of those people, let's talk about why not, okay? Because back in 2003, Saturn was transiting through Cancer. Okay, now Cancer and Capricorn are exact opposites, but it's not just that they're opposite that really connect them so much in this particular instance. It's that these are the 4th and 10th houses. I mean, these are really, really, really important houses in our charts. And 2003 is a time, right? Saturn through the 4th house is a time of deep psychological work. There's connections with our home place, with who we are, with our feelings of security and feeling deeply rooted and feeling like we belong and feeling like we have roots. And if anything was going on in 2003 where you didn't really deal with who you are and really where you're coming from and any issues with your emotional security, those likely reared their ugly head at some point between 2017 and now. And they may have had a negative impact in your career. So we have to be very, very careful that when Saturn makes a transit into a new location in our charts, that we actually don't avoid it, because the more we avoid it, the harder it's going to be, and it will rear its ugly head later on. Like, that's a guarantee of Saturn, right? Because he makes us do the work. So it's one of those things where you better just bite the bullet, get your hands dirty, and just dive in, because what have you got to lose except the benefits, right? Now, a lot of you may not have experienced that, because back in 2003, maybe your life was, really great and you had good things going for you and life was moving the way you were really hoping it would go. Well, now 14 years later, we're probably getting some reflection going on and being like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did the work. I'm so glad I grew. I'm so glad I made those changes that I knew my soul was calling me to make, because now here I am and I'm enjoying such bounty, right? And it can be so fruitful, a Saturn in Capricorn. It really, really can. This has so much to do with our structures and the laws. I'm going to use like big words, but our own inner regulations, our own inner laws, our own sense of morality, our own goodness and who we are. Those kinds of things come out. And if we have been a good person, I'm not saying bad things can't happen to you, but in general, if you've been a good person and you keep your energy right and you keep yourself in really good circles, this would have been an amazing time. Now, if you didn't enjoy the benefits of that, okay, that's okay, because as Saturn goes forward into Aquarius, he's going to give us a little bit of a taste of where we're going, but he's going to dip back into a Capricorn, like I was saying at the beginning of the video. And this whole year really can be about getting yourself right? Making sure you're on the right track morally and with your values, and making sure that you are really aligned with the things that are important to you. Saturn doesn't necessarily want us to go out and have, these elaborate, all these things. That's great, and Saturn can bring those kinds of things, but that's not really what he's about. He's about our core goodness. And I often equate him to the Hierophant in the tarot cards, because it is so pure, right? It's like the purest form of who we absolutely are. And anything external with that, it's going to be really hard. Like if it's not imperfect, it's not collaborating, it's not in perfect cohesion with who we really are and that light inside, we're going to struggle. And that's why when Saturn goes through big houses like our 10th house or our 7th house, house of relationships or something, why people their relationships come to screeching halts. This is why Saturn has a bad rap. It has nothing to do with Saturn, it has everything to do with us. So when Saturn goes through Aquarius, there could be a tendency for you to want to withdraw. Because it can be hard to work with people. It can be hard to collaborate because you're not going to really be able to do things the way you want to do them, because it's not about you, right? Houses 1 through 10, okay, yeah, it's about you. Houses 11, 12, not about you. 11 is about you in a group, you in humanity, your community, if you're politically inclined, it's all about your political party, that kind of thing, like how you associate in a larger collective consciousness. So a tendency to withdraw, a tendency to, not want to go out and not want to connect and not want to work with people. You have to be careful because Saturn wants you to. He wants you to go through that struggle. He wants you to push. He wants you to make those things happen. And if you don't, 14 years from now, when Saturn enters into Leo, there's going to be, these themes coming out. We always have to be thinking about our future, right? We have to be always constantly laying foundations for ourselves. And because this is such a huge foundational year in so many other regards, it's important, especially now, that we set that tone, okay? You've earned the good stuff. You really have. Saturn through Aries. When was Saturn in Aries here? 1996, right? That was the time when Saturn was coming through your first house. So since 1996 all the way through till now, there have been some lessons, right? Like who would say otherwise? There's been some lessons. So hopefully you can, really keep your eye on the ball here and really do what feels uncomfortable now. Because if you can do what feels uncomfortable and go out and explore, right? Because man, we have this Saturn and Jupiter conjunction happening in the 11th house at the end of the year. And this is really going to be about you and others. It's going to be very inclusive. So it's not really going to be able to be about just you at this point. Okay. And then when Saturn re-enters into Aries, I believe 2025, that's going to come along with Neptune as well. You're going to have an opportunity, a very pristine, clean, blank slate for a whole new set of lessons. You don't want to go through another 30 years or 28 years of the same lessons, do you? Like, I don't think you do. That would super suck, right? Just me, just saying, it would super suck to go through a whole new cycle again, a whole nother 28 years doing the exact same things. So any issues, any 10th house problems, right? At this point, you're going to have the opportunity to correct them. So you have to keep your ear to the ground. You have to listen. You have to listen to your gut, to your instincts, to your soul, and pay attention to the opportunities that open up for you, because that will set the tone for you for a very long time. Okay, so it's going to be a great year. Really, truly. I wish you nothing but the best, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks. All right, Taurus, let's get into it. Okay, Taurus, so you have had Saturn in your 9th house since the end of 2017. Do you guys remember that shift? I remember it so clearly when that happened, like it was yesterday. So much was happening at that time. 2017 was a super tough year. You guys had just come out of a Saturn in the 8th house transit, if I could talk, which is even like that much more intense, that much more severe, really pushing through all of this transformation and change. And finally, Saturn in the 9th house, even though that's not technically like one of his best houses, I still really like him here because he has this ability to really crack us open and to ensure that our beliefs and our sense of self and our kind of view on life is really solidified in a beneficial way. And we have the power to kind of work on the skill, right, to skillfully live in this game called life. And we have, the wherewithal to hone our skills, to work with people, to communicate, and to be able to really expand. That's like the best word for a 9th house anything. It's like expansion, expansion, expansion. It's the expansion that happens after transformation, right? 8th house. So now, what's so exciting, I'm like really thrilled for you guys, because as Saturn enters into Aquarius, this is going to be 10th house. This is where Saturn reaps rewards, right? This is where he reaps what he sows. And this can be one of the best transits of your lifetime, okay? Now, if I want to think back, okay, 2005. I had to check my dates for a second. But if you can think back to 2005, what was going on in your life at that time? And what lessons did you learn? And, who was involved in your life and what was going on emotionally for you at that time? I had to keep bringing this up because 4th house and 10th house are so rife with information, okay? Whenever we have anything going on in the 4th or 10th house, it really defines who we are as a person in such a profound way. When you had Saturn in 2005 through your 4th house, house of Leo, right? You were asked, whether you did the work or not, I don't know, but you were asked to go real deep within your own psyche, right? This is a house that's ruled by the moon. And this is a time when our emotional security is so important. It's a time when we have this, this wherewithal to find our safety, to find our real sense of joy, and to really clean up a lot of the things that aren't serving us. I mean, we can do that at any time, but when it's the 4th house, right, especially with the essence of the father or the parental figures, cleaning up any childhood traumas. So if you didn't do that work at that time, it's likely that some of that stuff will show up now that Saturn is going into your 10th house. Hopefully you did. Hopefully you didn't really have anything to deal with anyway. But if you had a lot of stuff and you didn't do the work, over the next 2.5 years, you're going to be able to rectify those issues, but you won't necessarily enjoy the profound, fruits of your labor that maybe you're hoping for. Not saying you can't. You can definitely do both. It just depends on what's the most important for you at this time in your life. Because when it comes to your career and who you are, that's so connected with where you're coming from. It's this very clear, straight line trajectory from like past to the future. You know what I mean? And hopefully there's nothing. Hopefully you can just plow forward and you can go and start those businesses and get those promotions and build that family and connect with the people that you love. And you have that, the guts to really, just chop away the things that really, really do not work. Saturn through the 9th, as he kind of dips back into the 9th, back and forth between the 9th and 10th. If you have ever been small-minded, now's the time when it's probably going to come back and bite you in the butt a little bit. And you're going to be like, oh, damn, that really was such a stupid way of thinking. I can't believe I used to think like that. It's really important that you remain humble and that you don't judge yourself too much, because we can always so easily look back at the stupid things we did. Like, please believe me, as a Virgo, I do it all the time. It's so easy to look back at the stupid things we did and just really judge ourselves for it. But 9th house is not a time for that. 9th house Saturn has really high morals, high sense of self-value, a high sense of, contribution and being able to share your spirit with people. And hopefully you've been very open with other cultures and other ways of thinking during this time. If you haven't, then you'll probably have a hard time with Saturn through the 10th because you just aren't open enough to really receive the directions from your soul, from your higher self that's trying to direct you in a path of least resistance. Man, I look at Saturn and he really just operates in one way or the other. He's really like your best friend through work, like the best coach you ever had that's like going to get you to the Olympics, or he is like the biggest roadblock you could ever, and it's either one or the other, and you don't really get a medium. Saturn is like just real harsh and real clear cut, real black or white, right? So how is it really going to manifest for you? The more easy flowing and the more willing to do the work you are, the more Saturn will push you, but the more you'll grow at the same time, right? So when you focus on your career, when we enter into this, beautiful, oh my gosh, I'm like so excited for this Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in the 10th, because it will set the tone for you and probably the rest of your life for this career powerhouse of expansion and just really start taking off in some way, shape, or form. And Aquarius is a sign of gain, so when it comes to your finances, when it comes to, your place in society. There could be some pretty major jumps, right, in a positive direction, upward mobility, that kind of thing. So I think Taurus is on a roll, and it would be really, really disheartening to see Taurus be afraid of the work that it's going to take and the work that it requires, because this is kind of a group of people, all these Taurus ascendants, that can make major, major differences in the community through their own success. It's kind of like when a Taurus rising succeeds, all of humanity succeeds. So you have to take it seriously, okay? Otherwise, you're just going to be real, like hitting up against that Saturnian wall. That's like, you gotta bang me down. You gotta bang me down. Like, I'm not going to let you through until you get that wrecking ball and bang me down. So choice is yours. Really, really cool time for you guys, though. I'm so thrilled. I hope you have an amazing 2020. All right. See you guys soon. Gemini. Yes, Gemini, I know. Gemini, I say it every single month in my monthly readings. I swear, it's like clockwork. Gemini, you've been hit so hard. You've been hit so hard. There's so much going on. It's your 8th house, you guys. I know. It's Gemini ascendant's 8th house, deep house of transformation, ruled by Capricorn, which is a thing in and of itself. But to have so much loaded up in there for like multiple years at a time, it's a lot. And Saturn finishing out his transit there, I think you'll truly feel a sense of elation, but it's not truly until the end of the year, right? Because he's going back and forth. So there are going to be things that have to be tied up. Okay, look, Saturn operates in a way that if you don't do the work, you hit major roadblocks. That's it. It's like one thing or the other. I just talked about this with Taurus. It's like, it's real clear cut. It's either the best coach you ever had that's going to get you to the Olympics, or it's going to be the biggest brick wall that you just kind of do a face plant in. You have to do the work, and you have to be willing to do it. And I don't think you've had a choice, right? Honestly, like the universe was like, okay, Gemini, you're going to be doing all the changes. You're going to be the one that is forced to go so deep. Okay, air signs, I think, got hit really hard by the Capricorn stuff because of the placement in the water house. It's either 8th house, 12th house, or 4th house. And I really think Aquarius, Gemini, really just that you guys got it the most. And so you have these deep psychological yearnings that have surfaced. There have probably been a lot of issues with parents and with mistakes that we made in the past that were unresolved, really coming out. And, the world gives us so many opportunities for us to resolve these things. And what happens when Saturn makes his way into the 9th house is you are going to feel this truly expansive, thank God. And you're going to feel like you got to congratulate yourself. You're going to have to pat yourself on the back and be like, oh my God, we did it. It's kind of like a Navy SEAL training, it's like only a teeny tiny group of people get out unscathed. The Geminis that are experiencing really, really tough stuff in their life are likely the Geminis that aren't really asking themselves the super hard questions, right? They're not being honest with themselves. The 8th house forces truth. It forces authenticity. It forces you to be your truest, purest, rawest form of who you are, right? This is Scorpionic house. It is intense, it is brutal, but it is full of blessings at the same time, right? So as Saturn lightens up in the 9th house, okay, it is also incredibly important at that time that you actually go along with the transformation, because I'll tell you that a couple years of all this Capricorn stuff is really not that long. And the tendency as Saturn moves on will be for many people to go back to where they feel comfortable. And then in the next 28 years, they're just going to go through it all over again, like it never even happened. So the goal here is to take this new form, this new set of butterfly wings that you've earned. Another kind of metaphor is, we have the serpent, the snake, who then transforms into the eagle, right? The eagle and the snake very intrinsically connected with the eighth house. And then as the eagle learns to fly, he can then soar above. He's no longer bound to the earth, but now he can soar, right? Sagittarius, ninth house. And he can see the entire forest all at once and the mountaintops and the clouds, and his whole perspective changes. So you have to take that and run with it, and you have to nurture that. You have to tap into the philosophy and the high-mindedness and the open-mindedness. Now you're Gemini, so you're kind of good at that already. But, ninth house is kind of, naturally, you guys are third house rulers, right? So you have that very third house way of thinking, and ninth house is opposite of you. So this is kind of an opposite way of doing things, and you're going to be asked to challenge yourself here. Humility is so important, because if you get cocky, if you get arrogant in the way you see things and the way you express your opinions and the way you treat people, it will come back and bite you in the ass. I promise you that. Absolutely 100%. You will be shown how wrong you are. You will be shown that your philosophy is broken. And it is the importance of a malleable mind, which is good for a mutable sign, to be able to adjust and to adapt very, very quickly, but to not be so steadfast in their own rules. Okay, this is not a time for rules. This is not a time for consistency and always doing things the same way and that's 10th house stuff, which you can deal with later on. But the reason why you have to open yourself up in this way is it's so that you can explore so many different ideas, so that when Saturn gets to the 10th house, which is going to be in 2017, or wait, hold on, where am I? Pisces, I'm sorry. I totally had my whole thing all mixed up. 2023. I was like trying to do the math. It was like all backwards and it was all nonsense. Okay, so in 2023, when Saturn enters into the 10th house, that is when the rewards start really coming out at you. Ninth house is not about rewards, right? It's about fun. It's about exploration and discovery, and especially because it's Aquarian in essence, so it's also outer space and extraterrestrials and new, like learning about this kind of religion that exists in like Central Africa, and then learning about the religion in Peru, right? So you have all these new cool ways of looking at spirituality, looking at yourself, and redefining all the lessons that you've learned. And then that's later on, right? Saturn enters into Pisces, and that is when you'll be like, okay, I have this arsenal now, this arsenal of really profound knowledge that I can use to propel myself and to solidify my direction in life. Okay? So, you have so many wonderful things to look forward to. But as Saturn dips back into the 8th, anything that is unresolved, anything that was left undiscovered, right? This is truly a no stone left unturned situation. No stone left unturned. There will not be an emotion you will not experience. There will not be an issue that won't resurface. It will all be available to you so you can resolve it. Because between 9th house and 12th house, it's not really a good time to be resolving personal problems. That's what the 8th house is for. All right. And people that kind of just glaze over, right? They go through the 8th house and then whoop, they revert back to who they always were and all that. The next several years is going to be real tough. Really, really, really tough, because it's like they know, but they're in denial. And the more in denial you are, karma is like, okay, well, I'll show you how wrong you are, and you can just get hit over and over. So open minds, humble hearts. All right. See you guys soon. Thanks so much. Take care. All right, Cancer. I've been excited to do your sign because this is, all this Capricorn energy, Saturn going through the 7th house it's been a lot. Back in 2003, okay, we had Saturn enter into Cancer. That was when, you were kind of in the hot seat there. And we really had to, as a collective, we all really had to define who we were. And there's a deep psychological component during this transit for everybody. We're forced to go in deep, deal with issues of emotional security, any issues with our parents, any traumas that have really defined who we are. And the people that didn't do the work back then are living outwardly those issues, specifically for the sake of resolution. Now, the seventh house demands a lot of us, especially when Saturn is over there, because there's a lot of expectation, right? Other people expect us, or you, Cancer ascendants, to really be there for them. And there's a lot of drawing you out. Now, in 2017, when Saturn went from your sixth house into your seventh house, right? It crossed that horizon edge, right? When we go from the 12th to the 1st, and the 6th to the 7th, we cross the ascendant and the descendant line. So the sun or the energy or the planet, right, in this case Saturn, is crossing a horizon, and it's especially potent during that time. So it really forces that focus outside of you, because houses 1 through 6 are all about you. Right? 100%, your thoughts, your feelings, your values, how you express yourself, how you work, how you give, how you communicate, how you interact, all these kinds of things, all about you. And after 14 years, since 2013, that gets pretty comfortable. A lot of introversion, a lot of sensitivity, a lot of spiritual development, a lot of growth, a lot of focus on what you want out of life. And then boom, all of a sudden you enter into the seventh house, and now you have to give. And I'm not talking about the like self-sacrificial, woe is me, victim, martyr kind of giving. This is like real, genuine, compassionate giving. You have to be there for someone else, and you have to start considering other people's desires and other people's values. And those things, if they don't align, it can be a point of contention. And man, the seventh house does not like confrontation, but when Saturn goes through there, he's like, it's time to battle. Let's sit on the opposite side of the conference room table here and really hash this out. It's me against you, right? And so if you are in a relationship that is a long-standing marriage, it can be, this is a time when issues can arise. This is an issues where you cannot align morally or your values, or someone decides all of a sudden that they just want something different out of life. It's very common. And that's just Saturn through Capricorn, right? That's not even all the other stuff that's been going on over there, like with the nodes and the eclipses and Pluto, and now we got Jupiter, we got Mars, and just everything else that's been going on in that house for like a long time. So your main focus has been there. But as Saturn, right, this year is going to be dipping into your 8th house and dipping back and forth between the 7th and the 8th. Now the 8th house is transformative, right? It's the house of Scorpio. It's a house of deep, dark depths. Like my alliteration there, the deep, dark depths of our psyches, of our soul, our innermost desires. And it also has a lot to do with shared resources, okay? So I'm going to kind of speak to this both on a spiritual and psychological angle, and then the more materialistic angle, because Scorpio 8th house stuff goes both ways. On the internal side, this is a time when we have to be real. We have to be authentic. We have to be raw. We can't be anything false. And I think as a water sign, and this is a water house, it's going to be kind of feel better, especially after going through all that earth energy. And you have to be really straightforward, and you have to be real honest for the sake of someone else. Now this is absolute honesty for the sake of your own growth. And I think you sense, or you will sense, that your future is kind of on the line. With the development that happens during this transit over the next couple of years up till 2023, you are going to have to get real. And it's kind of at the expense of like, I don't really care what anyone else thinks. I got to do this for me. Okay? And you have to align. You have to be spiritually aligned with what you want. Otherwise, the next 2 transits, as Saturn makes his way through Pisces and then through Aries, there could be a lot of confusion in your life. So you have to do the work at this time. You have to be able to go deep and to really ask yourself, who you really are and what's really important to you. On the material side, Eighth house is all about shared resources. So there could be issues with a spouse's finances, or you could be, maybe dating people that don't have a lot of money, or that suddenly loses their money, or you could be trying to get a loan for a bank and then all of a sudden the bank denies you, right? Those kinds of things. So your self-reliance is especially important during this time too. But you have to be able to balance your own self-reliance with a kind of like an openness to being able to depend on other people, because Saturn can also take it too far in one direction as well, as being like, I'm going to do everything myself. I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to design it. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. But by doing that, you could also be missing out on the valuable insight that other people have to offer. Resources more usually means money, but it can also mean people's value, like in who they are and in their experience, and it would be in your best interest to continue to do what you want to do and accept full responsibility for those things, but also at the same time be open to other people and what they have to say, because I don't want to see you completely shutting the door on things either, but don't sit around and wait for it either. This could be a time when a lot of Cancerians could just really shut down, and I'm a little bit nervous for that, because Cancerians, you could go through this like feeling of extreme skepticism of people. You could be really doubtful and have some pretty severe trust issues, especially if you just went through some real hardships in your relationship department, right? And now you're like kind of shutting down, going into that scorpionic cocoon where it's like, okay, I'm going to transform, but you may pull a little bit too far away from the world. But you're going to have some amazing spiritual insights during this transit as well, because like I said, we kick off Saturn in Aquarius with this beautiful Saturn and Jupiter transit. Or conjunction, right? Where they come together in the sky. And for you, in such a profound eighth watery house, depths of the soul kind of place, and an emotional place, I think you're going to have a lot of I think you're going to see a lot of value in your emotions and in your feelings. Like we kind of live in a culture where it's kind of like, oh my God, you're so emotional, like chill out. You got to relax, and you're so sensitive and blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, we know. But really there's a lot of value there, because the emotions are so intrinsically connected to like magic and your ability to manifest things. The emotions are intrinsically connected with your intuition as well, which is totally your thing as a moon ruled sign, right? It doesn't get more intuitive than that. So we have this whole like opening up in that regard, and self-trust, which is really fantastic as well. And then as Saturn makes his way through Pisces and then through Aries, you're going to start getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of this kind of tough stuff that you've kind of been going through, or that you will be about to go through in terms of your own self-metamorphosis, you'll be able to really reap the rewards for this. The Cancerians who completely shut down and like completely distrust people and just cut down opportunities left and right, the Cancerians that do that to themselves are just causing themselves to lose out on the benefit when Saturn gets into Aries, right? And that's 2025. Okay, 2025. And that's the time for you to reap the Saturnian blessings. That's when the fruit comes. That's when the reward is actually a tangibility for you. So you have to keep your future in mind. And even though it can be hard, and even though it can be intense, you're perfectly capable of handling the work, right? The universe will never give us anything that we can't handle. So it is important that you have that faith in yourself. Okay? All right. I'm going to leave you guys with that. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon. All right, Leo, I'm so excited to talk to you guys about this Saturn transit, because for you, it's like for all the fixed signs right now, it's just so like powerful, and there's just such a major shift going on, which is super exciting. But for you especially, because what's happening is Saturn is leaving the first hemisphere, right? Leaving the 6th house and entering into the 7th house. And when we have a major planet like this crossing over a horizon, so whether it's from the 12th to the 1st or from the 6th to the 7th, as it crosses this major line, we start going in a whole new different kind of way. It kind of has like a 180-degree angle kind of feeling. So as Saturn has been transiting your 6th, there's been so much focus on tying up a lot of loose ends and really perfecting who we are, right? Because in 2005, Saturn was in your sign. It was in Leo. 2005. So what were you guys doing in 2005, right? If you think back, what was really going on at that time? And I suspect that it had a lot to do with really shaping who you are. And it was deep, and it was internal, and it was questioning a little bit of your existence a little bit. And as Saturn made his way through Virgo and then through Libra and so on and so forth, you know, 1st house, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th house. And now here we are 14 years later, and we have this major transition from the bottom hemisphere about us. And now we're switching it from the internal world to the external world. And it's going to start really expanding us, or you specifically. I'm not a Leo ascendant, so it's really going to be expanding you guys. And the switch from the 6th to the 7th, I think, is really going to feel... Okay, let's say it like this. 6th house Saturn can make us feel like no matter how hard we work, no matter how many hours we put in, no matter how great we are, no matter how creative we are, no matter how much effort we put in, we always kind of fall short within ourselves. We can have a lot of demands at work. We can have some issues with coworkers at that time. We can find ourselves really servicing others and putting other people's needs before our own during that time as well. Our effectiveness as a human being is really coming into the spotlight here. Our effectiveness, our ability to be efficient, to produce, and our ability to become masters of self, really. As we make this transition to the 7th, now all of a sudden everyone sees how great you are. Wow, look at Leo. Wow, look at what they're able to accomplish. Look how beautiful their work is. Look at how talented they are. Look at how, creative they are. And look at what's going on in their life and what they've been able to generate. I want some of that. And 7th house, it can really pull a lot of this energy. It's been so much about you. Now it's like, and it starts to give it over to the world. And it starts off with one-on-one connections, and then it makes its way into bigger and bigger groups. We get into like careers, and we get into humanity and communities, and then we get into like the oneness of the universe. So, it starts to just get bigger from here on out until we begin the cycle again later on in like 14 years. So these one-on-one connections, if we had something going on back in 2005, and we didn't deal with it, we didn't address it, and we didn't work through it, it's likely that those kinds of issues are going to surface during this time. Now, this is mostly be in 2021. So 2020, as Saturn dips back into the 6th house and kind of does his little toggling back and forth, he's going to give you a taste of what you can experience, in your relationships. And then he'll say, okay, you can kind of get an idea of what kind of issues might arise. So as we go back into the 6th, let's take care of it now. Let's resolve it. Let's talk about it. Let's surface it. Let's make sure that we get down deep, because 6th house is ruled by Mercury, but it's not like the Gemini kind of Mercury that's like all over the place, right? This is the Virgo kind of Mercury. The Virgo Mercury that gets laser sharp focus on a thing, right? It goes real deep. It hones in. It's got its like little goggles on so it can really see. So sorry for the noise, guys. I don't know if you can hear it, but it like has that super laser sharp focus so you can get to the crux of the issue. And then you can fix it, because that's what Virgo likes to do. That's what sixth house really forces us to do. Plus, it's in Capricorn for you as well. So it's that earthy component of trying to be effective, trying to be useful, trying to be, contributing and trying to be good. And you'll have that opportunity to fix it, to resolve it, to be able to ensure that it's not going to be a problem. Okay? Now, I think the problem for Leo as Saturn enters into the seventh house, one of the issues that will be is, are you capable of sharing the spotlight? Are you capable? Are you really capable of sharing the spotlight? Now, if you're a mature and evolved Leo, the answer is a resounding yes, of course. Yes, of course, I can share the spotlight with my significant other, with my loved ones, with my friends, with my business partners. And yes, I can collaborate with people and I can communicate, because seventh house does not like confrontation, but it will bring people to a head if it needs to be done. If those seventh house scales are not balanced, it will ensure that it's gonna do what it's got to do to balance them. So you have to be prepared for anything that's off kilter to swing back to the middle point. You can't be afraid to come to the table and speak your truth, but you also can't fault other people for bringing things to the table too, because they are going to have their values validated. Because they are valid. Their values and their perspectives and their perceptions of things are 100% valid. Oh my God, you guys, I'm so sorry. Can you hear that? I don't know if my microphone is picking it up, but there's like tons of kids out there playing and screaming. So I'm super sorry about that. Okay, sorry about that. I had to turn off my camera because the kids were so loud, it was distracting. But anyway, here we are. Let's get back into it. So we were talking about the validity of other people's opinions, other people's perspectives. And, it is going to be crucial, Leo, that you open yourself up to really hearing people out. And this is a time when your compassion can really be tested. And because you are Leo, ruled by the sun, and it's so like a powerful thing, I think you might get annoyed at people's fear of life at this time during this transit. You might get frustrated by other people's restrictions. But remember that if you are being annoyed or getting irritated by how other people are holding themselves back, it could be indicative, or it could be kind of a mirror image of how you are doing it as well. Not everyone shares the Leo confidence. I mean, you guys know how blessed you are to have prominent Leo in your chart, right? I mean, it really is such a blessing. So you have this right out of the gate, from jump, from birth, this amazing blessing to be able to feel confident in who you are and to be able to express yourself in a creative, in a passionate kind of way. And not everyone can really match that. And so there might be an adjustment period of toning down your light, not really toning down your light, but like helping to shed light on someone else, like really sharing. This is kind of that perfect image of like if a candle lights another candle, the original flame doesn't lose any of its light at all or any of its warmth. It will always stay the same. But are you capable of helping someone else light their own flame as well? And it might be hard because you're going to have to dedicate time, energy, and attention to someone else. And if you are a Leo who has been very self-centered and very self-focused, that's not a bad thing. But now the lessons become, how are you able to really interact and to share your stuff with other people? And are you willing to let other people, rise without you? Because the seventh house Libra energy, you need two fully independent people. That's why houses 1 through 6 and sixth house is so much about perfection, because you need to have the wholeness in order to be able to truly share in a beneficial way in a seventh house capacity. You have one whole person here and another whole person here, and together they can create a whole life, or they can achieve a whole goal, right? They can build a whole something. But if you have a person that feels kind of broken and who feels insecure and who feels dim, and another person who feels the same way, you can really just kind of bring out the problems And Saturn will emphasize those problems for resolution. It's not bad that those things surface. It's just time to resolve it. All right. And that's going to be kind of the lesson of the 7th house for you. And as he kind of makes his way into the 8th house in 2023, I have to keep checking my dates. I can never retain that information. But as he makes his way into the 8th house in 2023, as he goes through Pisces, there's going to be, okay, well, you've had a taste of working one-on-one. Let's go back to the drawing board a little bit. Let's do the transformation, and then we can re-emerge in 9th house energy and be extraordinarily open-minded. And then you make your way into the 10th house, and that is when the rewards really, truly just bust wide open. So you're building up to that 10th house Saturn here. At this point, you've officially entered into that hemisphere, and you are going to have to keep a long game in mind, okay? Okay, now we can really stop the camera. Thank you guys so much. Talk to you soon. Okay, Virgo, let's talk about you and how Saturn is impacting you. So this year, Saturn will be transiting from your 5th house into your 6th house. Now, the 6th house is kind of a cool place for you. It's your natural place. It's where you like to be, you know. And it has a lot to do with your work, okay? It's very clear cut, it's very earthy, it's very dry, you know, how you contribute in the world and how you are of service and good health and things like that, things that are very within your control. But you're not going to be fully in that until 2021. You're going to have an opportunity as Saturn dips back into your 5th house to really resolve issues with self-expression. And I know that sounds like kind of a hokey terminology to use, but 5th house is a consolidation of the first 4 houses. And Saturn entered into Virgo in 2007. Like if you think back to 2007, as Saturn came through your first house, you know, what was really going on in your life during that time? What event occurred? What kind of, you know, situation were you in romantically, and what was your relationship with your parents and your children and all of those things? Because when Saturn comes from a 12th house into the first house, it's a pretty major swing. And I just had this talk with a couple of the other signs too, because when it makes that cross over the horizon from 12 to 1 and then from 6 to 7, these are really important transits for these outer planets to go through. So from the 12th to the 1st, we get kind of a much inward focusing now on yourself, and you're kind of forced to be there for like 14 years. It's a lot of introspection. It's a lot of introversion, has a lot of like building up on things, right? So we go through 1st house Saturn, 2nd house Saturn, 3rd house Saturn, and it's all of this like what's important to you, what do you really value? And there can be a lot of struggle in the external world if we are ignoring the inside, right? And we can, even if we succeed in the external world, there's usually not a lot of joy because we haven't really found that within ourselves yet. So Saturn has been teaching us so much about who we are, why we think the way we think, how we communicate, why we feel the things we feel. And Saturn in 2017, at the end of 2017, entered into the 5th house, which is a house of creativity, our self-expression, and really tying together all of these different components of ourselves. Now, this year, he'll be making his way into the 6th house, which really enables us to perfect, that's you guys, right? To perfect everything, to get everything as skilled as possible, to maintain, you know, a high quality of effectiveness and efficiency and productivity as possible, and to become true masters of self. But right now, you're kind of in that teeter-tottering between like learning, and then you're going to step into the master's program over the next few years. So 5th house, let's talk about that for a minute. Okay, 5th house has a lot to do with romance on one hand. I'll talk about romance because I suspect a lot of people had some interesting experiences romantically since 2017. With Saturn, there's a component of age. All right, let's just say it. So if you're single and you're dating, you may have aligned with people who were either much older or much younger than you. And in a weird Freudian kind of way, one of you may have taken on the parental roles, right? One of you may have taken on, kind of like a girl who dates someone 15 years, her senior, but it's also resolving a lot of father issues as well. Not that it's a bad thing, but that's kind of how this type of situation can really play out. Some of you may have experienced a lot of challenges with connecting with people, because with all the introverted elements of the first through the fourth houses, fifth house really is an inclusive place where we do invite people in and it's fun and it's enjoyable and we can go party and go clubbing and, do like the fun social thing, however you socialize, however you see fit. But it can still like bring about challenges and we can say like, well, wow, I really don't align with this person or this group of people anymore. And, I don't find joy in that anymore the way I used to. And it doesn't matter to me as much as it used to. And it can be a time when you may pull back, but it's so important, though, that you do put yourself out there and you do confront challenging situations. And so if you have been more withdrawn since 2017 than normal and you've been kind of like in your place, in your own safe, secure place, that fear could manifest later on, especially as that Saturn makes his way from Aquarius into Pisces, which is happening in 2023. So in 2023, you're going to feel that boom shift, and it's going to go out into the northern hemisphere of the zodiac, right, or the upper hemisphere, and all of a sudden all this energy for the past 14 years that has been so dedicated to who you are is now going to be forced to like give back into the world. That's a very kind of a major shift that happens. It's like all the inner stuff and then the stark contrast, the immediate shift into our place in humanity, okay? And so this is going to be a time where, as challenging as relationships can be, as difficult as they can be, and as many issues as you may have had, and this also includes with your children, because fifth house is the house of children, so I have to put it out there. It also has to do with your confidence in your creativity, and I say creativity, but it doesn't have to be, an artist. It could be anywhere. We are all creative in some way, shape, or form. But it's our confidence in our creativity that can be on the docket here too. And that creativity could have been really stunted during this time. That won't be the case moving forward, but you're going to have a little bit of a taste this year of like, all right, you're stepping into the master's program. It's time to get real serious. So let's make sure, dips back into the fifth, let's make sure that we've taken care of anything that needs to get wrapped up, for your fifth house lessons. It's kind of like your unit 5 lessons, before you make it to unit 6, the master class. And it'll be okay. Oh, my candle just burned out. I burned it down to the wick, apparently. It will be okay, it's okay to go out and to confront the problems and to have challenges in relationships. It's okay to fight with people. It's okay to have differing values and all of that. The whole point of it is to show courageousness, right? It's to show courage. It's to show fearlessness. And as you make your way into the sixth, you're going to need that fearlessness to go real deep, because sixth house can have us working really hard. Right? Sixth house can have us being hard on ourselves, which you guys are so much anyway. I mean, Virgo rising, let's be honest. You push yourself. You want to be the best for yourself. It's not even like I want to be the best for other people. I want to be the best in society. It's not like that for Virgo. It's just like I want to be the best because that's the standard that I hold myself up to. But in the sixth house, there will be a lot of mistakes. Because Saturn is going to show you how important is it really to be this idea of who you think you want to be, and he's going to challenge that. So you have to be willing to change and to shift and to mold yourself in a different kind of way. This is the house of wisdom. There's a lot of wisdom that can be had from the 6th house. And plus we have the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction as well, which is extremely profound. So when it comes to that hermit, wise man, mentor kind of energy, which is what you are becoming, you're becoming a wise individual. The Jupiter with Saturn, which are both teachers, they just teach in different kind of ways. I always say my Saturn is like a coach, whereas Jupiter is more like a cheerleader, right? But they both encourage. It's just different methodologies. But when they come together, you have really the best of both worlds. So your wisdom, your knowledge, your sense of higher consciousness becomes more and more achievable at this time. And some of you may take on, like, I'm going to start teaching, I'm going to start giving back to people, I'm going to start sharing my story, right? Using the lessons that you learned about self-expression since 2017 in a way that really, gives back. Some of you may have some health things that come up. It doesn't necessarily have to be so serious, but there are health issues that could surface. That's okay. It's a lesson in treating your body as good as possible, and being kind to your body by not indulging in pizza and fries, self-care. But no, like, I'm going to treat my body like the temple that it really is. And I think the connection with your body might be a little bit challenging, more challenging than it normally is, because you're usually so in tune, right? That's the Virgo thing, is being so in tune. Like, what's my gut saying? What's my body saying? What, am I hydrated? All those kinds of things. But that connection may be a little bit challenged as you progress. But ultimately, if something goes wrong and you take care of it really fast, it will just go away and you'll be like, okay, you'll be totally good, And then you'll be prepared to enter into the 7th house, in 2023 as Saturn makes its way there. And you can be as whole of a person as you can be to be able to deal with people on a one-on-one basis. Okay? But a really amazing time for you, Virgo. I really wish you nothing but the best. Have an excellent rest of the year, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Okay, Libra, I'm so excited to talk to you because I'm a Libra ascendant as well. So I know a lot about this because I study it for myself and how it's affecting me. And I can even use a little bit of my own personal experience here a little bit as well. So for Libras, Saturn is going to be moving from the 4th house into the 5th house. Now, the 4th house, since 2017, there's been so much focus for Libras on home. Right? Our home and our sense of security, our sense of safety, really connecting with establishing roots or revisiting our roots, those kinds of things. And it's all very beautiful. It's all very wonderful and all very well and good. But it has forced deep psychological analysis. Now, when Saturn was in Libra, he was moving between, Virgo and Libra between 2009 and 2010. Sorry, I had to check on my little notes here because I can never remember the dates. So 2010, if you think about what was going on in your life during that time, I'll tell you that when that was happening for me, I went through a really, really painful breakup. And I started to date someone else who was so toxic, like the worst relationship ever. But I had made a major transition at that time. And I had started my own business and I had started all these kinds of new things. And it was time for me to really set off and grow. However, during that time, the growth was really hard. Like, it just didn't seem to want to take. It just was like, I had all this ambition, and I suspect you did as well, all this ambition, and yet it just was like, it just kept coming up like real freaking hard, right? And that's because Saturn was coming through the 1st house, coming through the 2nd house, which forces you, 2nd house transit, right? For you guys, it's in Scorpio, or for us rather, throw myself in there. Saturn through Scorpio, it really makes you look at the material world, right? And it makes you look at what matters. like your real values, your real moral compass here comes out. And if you are fighting so hard for the money or the materialistic representation of who you think you should be, you're gonna fall flat. And I think a lot of Libras fell flat. And I'm not saying you didn't achieve anything. I'm not saying you didn't go get new jobs and you didn't do the things, but it's just like the happiness wasn't there. Now, if you decided to go inward and actually do the work, which I didn't do, but if you actually went in and did the work during that time, then the money kind of probably just came to you. And then as Saturn moved to the third house, it was all about your patterning and really thinking about, who, or the connection that you make or your beliefs and how you communicate with people. And, that can be tough because you can have things come at you from the external world and show you how close-minded you are, or how silly you are, or how dumb you are, or, clearly you haven't studied, clearly you don't really know, clearly you don't have that perspective. And it can be like, oh my God, I don't know anything. And you can go kind of off the deep end a little bit and feeling like you don't know anything. And then as Saturn comes into the fourth house, you go into the deep psychological analysis of really why you are the way you are. And there's deep connections with parents, especially coming out during this time. And for you to find a safe haven is so important. And so the past few years has really been geared toward finding that safe place because you need this foundation. Look, the next 14 years, it's making its way back up to the 10th house, all right? We're in the 4th house. 10th house is where Saturn reaps the rewards. This is where you reap what you sow happens. So in the next 14 years, there's going to be a lot of reflection of what's going on in our lives right now. And there's going to be the people that are avoiding this work, that don't want to look inside themselves, that don't want to deal with the painful stuff, that don't want to surface all the yucky emotions. And when the time comes, Saturn in Cancer, next time that happens, which is 2031, I think. It's a ways away, obviously. When that time comes, they won't get the cool stuff that comes with that. They won't get the rewards. They won't get the accolades, the accomplishments. They won't get the progress in their career. Or they will, and it will feel like crap because they're like, this is not important to me. You see what I mean? So since 2009, 2010, all the work that Libra has been doing is really building up to something. And I know that Libra is starting to feel like an opening. And as Saturn moves into the 5th house now, this is going to take you out of, not entirely, because really all the first 6 houses are so much about us, and it's a very introverted time. But as it opens up into the 5th house, we start incorporating others a little bit more, and we start communicating, and we start feeling confident in our self-expression of all these things that we've learned, because all these lessons are a culmination of so many things. And now we get to start figuring out how to package them together. And it may still be a little bit sporadic and a little bit, disorganized. But as Saturn moves into the 6th house, right, as it gets into Pisces, which is 2023, that's our real master class. That's where we get into the really advanced levels of development. But for now, it really is going to be about just kind of enjoying our time. We may not feel like we're going to be able to enjoy our time unless we earn it, because that's kind of what Saturn does. Is he's like, well, you can have fun, but you got to work real hard in order to do that, So we can enjoy our time here, and we can kind of loosen up a little bit and lighten up a little bit. And it's not all so serious, and it's not all so deep and emotional, because as Saturn enters into an air sign, I'm sure you guys feel it too. It's gonna be like, oh, thank God, because the earth sign Saturn and the water sign Saturn is just like, oh, it's so daunting, and it can feel so dense and so heavy. And it's like, enough with the profound stuff, right? Enough with the psychological stuff. okay, I'm over it. We're getting through it. We're making our way through it. I just want to be able to feel that joy. Fifth house is a house of joy. And I think you being more and more focused on your joy at this time is going to help you to align your career path and your relationships path and in the path that you have with your children and your friends, that those things are going to become a lot easier. That alignment is going to be easier because now you have a much better handle and you've reestablished a lot of structuring as to who you are. Right? So it becomes easier. And I think as we, fifth house, sixth house, these sort of tying up of loose ends, we will feel more secure and feel more pure in who we are. So there's benefit here. Now, I will say that a Saturn through the fifth can have some interesting effects on relationships. Not just with children, although children is definitely a part of it. Some people may have difficulty with children or, either having or conceiving, or even just if you've got a teenager, it can be a little bit rough sometimes. But it's temporary, right? It's only like a 2-year cycle. It's not really that big a deal. So it's just about making your way through it and just accepting the challenges head on and not trying to avoid them. And doing whatever you can, because the soul and the universe will guide you, even though you feel like maybe you don't have all the information. In a dating scenario or in a dating capacity, this transit can bring out age differences, right? Where you can start dating someone who's older than you or younger than you by a substantial amount. It could be 15, 20 years for some people. And you have to be careful because sometimes that can take on a parent-child role as well, which can be a weird Freudian aspect. Some of you may have already done that through the fourth house Saturn. If you were single and trying to date people, you may have taken someone who represented your father. That could be a thing, but it's probably more likely to take place during a Saturn through the fifth. It doesn't have to be a weird, gross thing, though. It's just, it's an opportunity for you to really resolve certain issues. Okay, so it's nothing to really shy away from. You just got to roll with the punches here. Relationships, though challenging, there's also an opportunity for people to really come together. Okay, so Saturn through the fifth might make you could rub things the wrong way a little bit, and you may have a hard time really jiving with someone. But if you do meet someone and you do connect with them, this is also a mark for a really solid relationship. Okay, so it could go either way. It just really depends. So it's important for you to be very open about your dating life if you're single. Okay, keep that in mind. All right, I'm going to leave you guys with that. It's a really excellent time. Thank you guys so much. Have an amazing rest of the year, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay, Scorpio, let's get into this. So this year, Saturn will be transiting from your third house into your fourth house. This is a really cool time, right? For sure. It's definitely a cool time, but it's going to be a little uncomfortable, okay? Because the fourth house is so deep. Now, you can handle depth. You are Scorpio after all, but this is not going to be able to keep things steady. Okay, this is like oceanic house of Cancer kind of thing, like real cardinal water that could even throw Scorpio for a loop. So let's think back for a minute, because in 2012, we had Saturn moving from Libra into Scorpio. So since 2012, the focus has been so much on you. So much internal revision. I mean, it's a lot, right? Houses 1, 2, 3, and 4, all inside, all up in here, always revisioning, restructuring, reordering, making new rules for yourself, moral standards, all that stuff. It's a lot. Don't get me wrong, okay? But prior to that, since 1998, when Saturn was entering into Taurus, had to check my dates there. Yep, 1998. Saturn entered into Taurus and gave you 14 years of a lot of focus on the external. So you had this elaborate external world, You know, you had careers and relationships and friendships and groups and connections and involvements in all these different areas of life. And, you had an opportunity to really build up this stuff. But when Saturn came in, boom, into that first hemisphere, that lower hemisphere of the chart, into your first house, that focus just whipped right around on you and just came, and like kind of punched you in the gut a little bit and forced you to really work on redefining who you are. And this is the polarity of life. This is what happens with every single planet, right? Every single planet is always swinging us, but Saturn is especially relevant because he really forces us to learn. So as Saturn was coming through the first house and then through the second, there was a lot of focus on realigning with your values, because maybe there were a lot of things in your external world that didn't really align with who you really were and what really mattered to you. Like, so maybe you had this great career, but you were feeling a little bit sad or a little bit empty inside regarding your human connection component, right? Whatever it was for you, I don't know, that was just an example. And then Saturn came into the third house in the end of 2017 and made his way through 2018, 2019. And this could have been a really tough time in terms of like really relating to people, communicating with people, being able to like be seen or to be understood. And there could have been a lot of judgment back and forth, you judging them judging you, and just a lot of disconnects. A lot of like people that were so supportive of you, and now all of a sudden they're like, they don't get who you're becoming. Like, they're like, who are you, Scorpio? Like, what is even going on with you? Who are you becoming? Like, who are you these days? And you're just kind of like, man, I don't know. Someone else. I just think about it differently. I'm just, I just don't think about life the same way I used to think about it. Just everything's changing. And you could feel very disoriented during that transit. It's very common because the third house wants to be very elaborate and bouncy and buoyant, and it likes to be real creative, and it likes to try new things and experiment and go, 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 go. And yet here's Saturn, kind of a Debbie Downer of a planet that's like, you got to figure your shit out. It's really what he's saying, right? You got to figure it out. You got to hunker down and you got to figure out why you think the way you think. Why do you think what you think? It's not a good time to really be concerned about what should be during this transit. It's really not. You just kind of got to look at things at face value during this time. Otherwise, you could get yourself into this whole tizzy of self-loathing because you're like, I'm not what I should be. My career is not what it should be. And it can be disheartening, and it can steal a lot of the benefits of this transit away, because what happens when Saturn transits through the third house is we have an opportunity to rewrite the rules. We can start thinking about things in a different way. And for a fixed sign, a fixed ascendant, this is a wonderful thing, because anything that is outmoded or anything that is played out or out of date or not applicable anymore, you can now break that down and develop something new and better and fresh for yourself. But you need to go through this mental revision so that when you hit the fourth house, which is what's going to happen, you can start looking at your own psychological development in a more productive way. So the Saturn through the fourth has a lot of different effects, okay? First and foremost, it has to do with our home, our place of security and where we feel safe, and our relationship with specifically like our father. And it has an opportunity to, for us to really establish roots. Or some of us may, like I just went through that transit, right, as a Libra ascendant. And I will tell you how many times I redecorated my home and did the whole feng shui thing and started designing a new home for myself. And it was very home-centered, like the actual physical building. There could be an instance where perhaps, getting a mortgage might be a little bit challenging, or getting financing for a home, or if you try to do a remodel, something might go wrong. So just kind of keep that kind of stuff in mind. But it's also a really good time to ask yourself where you want to be for the next 14 years. Because the fourth house is really setting the tone. And I've been saying this in a lot of the signs, is the fourth house sets the tone for the next 14 years. And as that transits all the way back through the 10th house, the 10th house is where we reap those rewards of Saturn. And if you really do the work of the 4th house, you will enjoy the rewards and not the lessons of Saturn in the 10th. Because Saturn in the 10th lessons can be real harsh because he can really restrict our success. Like if we're not ready for it, we're going to have the desire for it and we're not going to be able to achieve it. And that's where the kind of the tension really comes in. But if you allow your mind to change, as it should have been changing since 2017, you allow your mind to change. And then the other component of the 4th house is the deep psychological work, right? The moon, the lunar rulership of the 4th house comes out and says, it's time to expose this subconscious stuff, because the 3rd house is conscious mind patterning, you know? It has the ability how we communicate with ourselves and the narrative that we tell ourselves and all those stuff. So then the 4th house comes in and it's like, all right, well, here's a whole new mess of stuff. And it just kind of slaps it on the table. It's like, here's more stuff for you to really deal with. All the stuff with your childhood, all the stuff with your parents and da-da-da-da-da. And this trauma that you had when you were 7, let's talk about that, right? That's kind of what's going to happen. So you deal with it and you make your way through it and you make peace with it and you find forgiveness in your heart and you experience and you practice compassion and you start to see you in other people, right? When you start engaging with others, you say, that person may have a completely different life story, but intrinsically we are the same. That's one thing I love about the lunar energy is it is that reminder that on the inside, all we all really want is just love, right? We all just really want a place that we feel safe with people that we love. That's really all we want. So all the other stuff is not so relevant. All the other stuff is not so important. And this is going to give you that opportunity to align your life with your values. And that's saying something because that's hard to do because we're being fed all the time, like since birth, right? Especially the kids that are being born now with so much media and everything. I mean, we're just being bombarded with all these things that we're told should matter to us. But when you do the work of the first 4 houses, this is when you get to define what's important for you. And that's power. That is scorpionic power right there. And then as Saturn moves into Pisces, right, into the 5th house, you'll have that opportunity to start learning to express yourself in a different way, to start connecting with people and to become more whole, right? Because that's really what the whole first 6 houses are really all about, is developing a wholeness inside. So that when we do make our way back again, right, when Saturn enters Taurus in 2028, comes back into the 7th house and you get to kind of do that whole cycle all over again, you then get to take your whole spirit and then create another external world for yourself, right? And you get to kind of go through these evolutions. So it's going to be a really beautiful time, but if you're not willing to do the work and you just kind of pull away from the world and you just kind of wallow in your self-emotions, and if you don't like go to therapy and stuff like that, if you don't do any of the consciousness raising meditations, all that, it can feel so burdensome. We can be extremely introverted during this time and we can just really pull away, but then we don't grow from it, you know, and then like I say, you won't reap the rewards when Saturn hits the 10th in 14 years. So, you know, keep your eye on the long game, do the work, get dirty, do what you got to do, and you will see the benefits. All right. See you guys later. Take care. Okay, Sagittarius, let's talk about you guys. So you have Saturn in the 2nd house. He's been here since 2017, 2018, and now he's going to be dipping into the 3rd house and then kind of going back and forth between the 2nd and the 3rd this year. So I want to go back just a little bit and talk about 2014, 2015. Because that was, I had to check the dates, because that was the time when Saturn went from Scorpio into Sagittarius. And that transition from the 12th house to the 1st house is a really powerful shift, okay? Because the 12th house likes to undo things, right? We have this period of time where our structures just kind of dissolve and everything that we thought we knew or thought that we believed suddenly just sort of fades in front of us, and we just have to start over, right? First house. And the first house, second house, third house, fourth, fifth, sixth houses, these first 6 houses are really internal. This is about the process of perfecting ourselves or mastering who we are. And it requires us to really get to know who we are inside. And the second house, which is where Saturn has been since 2017, end of 2017, beginning of 2018, is all in the material world. Now, prior to Saturn entering into Sagittarius, right, 14 years prior, since like 2000, Saturn in Gemini, it's a long time ago, right? 14 years ago, like, wow. Well, not 14 years ago, longer than that, but since it came into your first house, it was 14 years prior to that. So all that 14 years was dedicated to your external world, who you were out there. You know, how you showcased, how you built a life, your career, your relationships, your connections, your friends, your groups, and all these things. So important to you. And now, boom, Saturn does his little magic 12th house work. Let's undo all this. None of this exists, and let's start over. Saturn comes in the first, and now in the second, questioning your values, questioning your morals. If you have hung on to these ideas of what you thought you were and who you thought you were and what you thought mattered, right, since, 2000 and so on, this is going to be a time when you're going to get shown like, it's not going to work. Not going to work, not going to be beneficial for you. And you might even lose, right? And some of you may have lost money. Really, you may have lost during the past few years. You may have gotten to some really bad business deals because it wasn't aligned. It didn't work. It wasn't what your soul was trying to get you to figure out. Like if you tried to make a big business investment during the past couple of years and it didn't really work out, this is because that big business idea was trying to fulfill an idea for your ego, not for who you really were. But if you took the time to really ask yourself what was important to you, how you could just be a better person, right? In a lot of ways, how you can be more self-sufficient, more self-reliant, how you can do things on your own and how you can, create that sense of empowerment for yourself, then you're going to start reaping the rewards here very shortly, okay? As Saturn comes into the third house, he's going to switch from this philosophical place of morality and value and self-worth and self-respect and all of that, and he's going to go right up here. And he's going to start challenging the way you think about stuff. And this can be really challenging because if you start changing the way you think, there could be some experiences where you actually start alienating people that have been in your life for a long time who just know who you've been, and now you're changing and they're like, oh my God, Sagittarius, who are you? Where is this coming from? Why are you even saying these words? And communication can be real tough because you're still developing, you're still learning. Humility is so important for you right now. And I have to just point out that the third house is like a very uncomfortable house for you guys because it's opposite of your natural ninth house. So when we have a major player like Saturn coming through the third house, which is an opposite energy of yours, it can feel like, like I don't know who I am. What is going on? Who am I becoming? And you can have this desire to just go try a lot of things. It can be really experimental. Like, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that, I'm going to do, and it's because you're wanting to express this creativity, but Saturn is going to be like, shut it down. Not saying you can't be creative still and do the things, but you have to acknowledge the change that's going on up here. Because if you don't, and you try to go do all this stuff, not to say it's not going to work, but I'm saying it might not really be as fulfilling as you would hope. And you might not necessarily bring on the right people. You might not have the right connections. It could be an uphill battle. So communication is so important. And when there are miscommunications, and when there are things that just don't align, it's important to not really fight that. To fight to make sure that someone sees it the way you see it. To fight to make sure that your opinions and your things are valid. And, it can be like an uphill battle that just won't even end in a victory a lot of times. It's not a good time to cast judgments on people. People are going to try to cast judgments on you. And your power really sits in not letting those judgments affect you so much. Not letting those external ideas stop your internal progress. The thing that you can really hang on to during this time is that you're becoming more wise. And wisdom is such a thing for you. You're Jupiterian. I mean, that's your whole gig, right? Philosophy and high level consciousness and religion and growth and expand. That's your whole thing. So the struggles that you have in connecting with people, and it could be, your friend groups, but it's more specifically like your local reality, like your immediate, your neighbors, your little communities, the people that you kind of associate with all the time, coworkers, that kind of thing, siblings especially. There can be, issues in those regards, but you have to just let people be what they are. Like I say, it's about what is, not what it should be. So the more you cling, the harder this is going to be, because you're going to feel very misunderstood. You're going to feel like people really don't understand you. And this transit is really preparing you, right? Because you're going to have to show yourself that you're capable of changing your mental patterning, because as Saturn moves into Pisces in 2023, there's going to be that deep psychological work. This is fourth house stuff. And I think it's going to be really uncomfortable for you guys, because this is in a squaring position. And that squaring position can kind of amplify some of the psychological components that's going to surface. But see, the third house is all about the mental mind up here, whereas the fourth house is about the heart. And it's going to just like take all the subconscious stuff, lay it on the table, and it's going to ask you to really deal with it. You're going to have to get deep. And your ability to adapt and to be malleable and flexible with your mind is going to set the precedence of how effective your fourth house Saturnian transit is going to be. That's not happening till like much later though, right? So you don't need to worry about it today. But you're going to have to just know that there is a long-term thing going on here. So the more humble you can be, the better, and the more fluid, the better. But any issues, as Saturn dips back into the second house this year, any issues with your values is going to come up. And if there has been, like let's say even you were on the stock market and you bought some stock for a company that maybe you really don't believe in because they, use these Chinese concentration camps or something to put together their products. And you're like, morally, that that's wrong, but there's also speculation that that stock is going to do really well. Probably is not going to work out for you. Right? Probably not. So you're going to maybe have some weird things that kind of surface like that are really going to force you away from the external and more in toward the internal. You're in an introverted phase right now, guys. I don't know what to tell you. Between now and until it enters into Gemini, which didn't even pull the date for that. That's at 2031. Did I say that already? 2031, something like that. It's going to be when, okay, then you can get back to the external. But for now, you have to be okay with doing the external journey, okay? The internal journey, sorry. I've been talking a lot. All my words are running together. So I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you guys so much. I wish you nothing but the best. Have an excellent, excellent year, I guess. Excellent year. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye. Okay, Capricorn, let's talk about you guys. Because we know what's been going on with you guys. There's been so much activity. There still is even, right? So much emphasis on your sign. And throughout 2020, a lot of this is going to just start clearing out. Jupiter will leave, Mars will leave, the node will leave, Saturn will leave, and then you'll only be left with Pluto, and that we can handle, right? Because now it's just lighter. Now, back in 2003, Saturn went from Gemini to Cancer, made that transition from the 6th house to the 7th house. Now, when this kind of transit happens between the 12th and the 1st house and the 6th and the 7th, we have this toggling back and forth between the lower hemisphere, the houses 1 through 6th, and the upper hemisphere, 7 through 12. And this is very much about an internal world versus an external world kind of vibe, okay? So since 2003, up until 2017, 2018, your whole life really was so externally focused on relationships, career building, being out there, being members of the community, growing, changing, evolving, transforming, money and all, like power and all this stuff. I mean, it's great stuff. It's a major part of why we're here. But come 2017, 2018, boom, Saturn makes that dip into the 1st house. And all of a sudden, all of that energy that was so dedicated to building this elaborate external world just comes inside. And it can feel like quite the rubber band effect, right? It can have a little bit of a sting to it, because now you're really being forced to question everything that all that external stuff is really built upon. And any extra striving, any like drive and ambition and all this stuff that you are like trying to hang on to, like, I don't want to let this go. I don't want to let my career change. I don't want to lose this relationship. I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this. The more and more you tried to hang on, the more Saturn pulled it away from you. And Saturn through the 1st, we know that this is kind of a house of Aries, but the Aryan nature here is so spiritual because it's really like the big I am, right? I am. Point of existence, the point of understanding that you are alive, and what does that really mean? And now all these things, relationships, career, money, achievements, goals, friends, community, all these things, they all like kind of cease to matter. And in 2018, you really kicked off a new 14-year cycle that was going to keep you internal for the next 14 years until, Saturn enters into Cancer again in I don't know, I didn't even pull the date. It's so far in the future. It's like 2030 something, 2033 or something like that, right? So we got time. It's really important that you don't try to rush this, because the more you say, okay, like I'm going to meditate for a year and I'm going to go to the ashram in India and I'm going to meet with monks and do all the yoga and do all this stuff. The more you do that, the more you try to like hurry this consciousness raising thing, oh man, Saturn is just going to laugh at you and be like, I don't think so, babe. Like, nope, that's not working. You're not going to be able to do that. You got 14 years. So now Saturn moves into the 2nd house, and 2nd house has a lot of connection with the material. So everything that I just said about the external stuff, there's a component here coming out for you. But the real beauty of the 2nd house has so much more to do with our self-value, our self-worth, our true, absolute sense of morals, what we value in the realist sense. And also like really looking inside and asking ourselves what we can do. When Saturn transits the 2nd, if you try to like go make money at something that is not in alignment with you, it's probably not going to work. And I just used this example in the last thing that I did for Sagittarius. It's like, let's say you wanted to invest in some stock, but you know that this company uses like Chinese concentration camps or labor camps, right? Let's call a spade, I guess. But, uses these Chinese labor camps, and you are morally disgusted by this. and yet you invest in a company that utilizes such labor, that stock probably will not prove fruitful for you. Okay? It's that kind of thing that the Saturn in the second really operates. He's going to pull the money away. He's going to pull the material reward away from you until you figure out what really matters. And it's hard because we're bombarded since birth, really, with so much media and advertising and so many things that we're taught that are supposed to matter. And yet Saturn here is like, look, none of it matters. You got to find your happiness. You got to find your joy. You got to find your purpose. First and second house Saturn really, it makes you look at your purpose. It's going to force you. If you're not asking yourself about, and when I say your purpose, it's not really about what you do for like a living, it's not about going and getting a new job. Like you can do any job and still fulfill your purpose, like one of my things when I used to run my old business a long time ago, I had an epiphany during that time. And the reason why people paid me so much money, like when they could just go online and hire someone for like a tenth of the price, but the reason why they hired me was because I listened. And I was able to customize their products for them based on what their values were. It had nothing to do with me, And so that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of purpose that will be drawn out. It's not like that was my purpose, to be able to listen, to be able to feel that compassion for another person. But it was coming out in some business that was like a tech business. We were building like e-commerce sites at the time before it was all like super easy, right? And like, that was my purpose. Just letting people tell me about what's important to them. And that can come out in any line of work. And so now you're getting to that focus of like, really, what is my purpose? Really, what is my value? And Saturn through the second, it's going to force you there. It's going to force you to look at it. It's going to force you to go deep. Second house is a real authentic house. There's no pretense. There can be no faking it in second house activity. It is not possible. You cannot trick the stars. Just can't do it. So, you can try to work out some kind of narrative that makes you think that, yes, you can invest in this stock, even though they do use this labor camp in China, all the reasons why this is going to be good and it's going to work out and it's going to benefit the world and somehow, and Saturn is just going to laugh at your face and be like, okay, that's nonsense. Let's just pull it away. And we'll kind of give you some loss because of that. But on the other hand, if you start looking at, I'm talking about investing because it's a house of money, but it doesn't have to be this scenario specifically. It can be investing in people, in friendships, those kinds of things. But, if you try to say, is this in alignment with what matters to me? Is this going to make me feel like I am making the world a better place? If the answer is yes, and you pursue it, it will likely produce massive rewards because that's Saturn, right? When you do things that are morally good, fundamentally good, and abide by the beautiful laws in this universe of compassion and love and all these wonderful things, Saturn pays out. He's like the best boss you'll ever have, right? The best paycheck you'll ever receive will come from Saturnian lessons. Okay, so it's important that you keep that in mind. It's not all bad. There are so many rewards to be had. So you have to be real. You have to be honest. And as Saturn makes his way into the third and fourth and fifth and sixth houses, you have to just accept that you're on an inner journey right now, and that's it. And not to say that things outside won't happen, because of course we have plenty of planets going through the whole thing all the time. But Saturn always gives us that focus, right? He's always like, I gotta pay attention. You gotta do it here. You gotta look here. And that can be hard sometimes. But you do it. And Capricorn is not a stranger to the journey. It's not a stranger to the work. It's not going to be hard for you guys. You just have to be honest. Okay? All right. Good. Thanks. I'm going to leave you guys with that. Thank you so much. I really wish you nothing but the best, and I will see you soon. Okay, Aquarius, let's talk about Saturn. This is an excellent transit for you guys. Such huge things going on. So Saturn's going to be coming into the first house, right? I mean, so cool. And Saturn likes to be in Aquarius. It is one of the co-rulers. It co-rules with Uranus, which we know. And he'll be doing a pretty major dip here, like dipping into the first house and then going back over that first house cusp and back into the 12th. I mean, this is kind of a no joke kind of thing going on here, and it's going to impact you in pretty much every area of your life. So we have, let's talk about this for just a second, because in 2017, late 2017, early 2018, Saturn came into Capricorn, which for you is the ruler of the 12th house. Now, the 12th house is a house of undoing. That's what it's called. It's the house of our undoing. Some people call it the house of madness, because it really is a period of closure. You are trapped between two worlds here. And it's not ever going to be the way it ever was, but it's not quite what it's going to be. And it can feel very limbo-like. And during this time, if you tried to start major projects and set all these long-term goals, it's really likely that that stuff just won't come to fruition, because that's not what 12th house is about. 12th house is closure. It's an ending. It's the end. It's the punctuation mark of a 28-year-old cycle. And you have to be able to be malleable and flexible, and to allow belief systems to end, and to allow your career to shift and your relationships to shift, because it's becoming something more beautiful. This undoing has to be done to prepare you for the next 14 years, all right? Because you've spent the prior 14 years building up this elaborate external network. You have careers, you have goals, you have ambitions, you have relationships and friendships, you have groups, you have beliefs and ideologies and philosophies and all these things that you're operating in. And then 12th house comes and it's like a period of questioning. Well, does this stuff really matter? Is it really important to me? Do I still want this? Is this really where I want my heart to be? Does this align with my future? What do I want my future to be? And it's a period of questions. A lot of questions can be very confusing. And then as Saturn comes into the first house, boom, that's a major transition between the external to the internal world, because now you've initiated a new 14-year cycle between Aquarius and when it enters into Leo again, which is 14 years from now. It will be, a period of introversion, introspection. All 6 houses, all houses 1 through 6, if I could speak, they all have to do with who you are inside, have to do with our internal belief systems, our philosophies, our morals, our values, how we think, our thought patterning, our emotions, our feelings of security, where we live, where we feel safe, how we express ourselves, and our bodies and our health and all these things. It's all about us. So the shift can feel very dramatic. And I think this year you're going to be like, oh my God, like maybe a little bit of nausea or seasickness almost, because you're just like, oh, what is going on? Like I feel like I'm just rocking back and forth, right? First house, 12th house, first house. It's just, you're really, really in between worlds right now, more so than anybody else in the zodiac. This is on you. And you're becoming a point of focus, Aquarius, right? You're going to have Saturn. And then later on in 2024, we're going to get Pluto through your sign. So, when it comes to the Aquarian blessings for the zodiac, we are preparing for some major transitions here. And first house is going to really ask you, what's important to you? Who are you? That's a big question, who are you and what does it mean to be an awareness? Really, because that's really all you are, is just an awareness. What does it mean to have consciousness? What does it mean to be in this earthly experience and to have this body and to have like a belief, like what even is a belief, and why do we even have them, and why do we operate according to these things? All this kind of stuff is very prominent in first house Saturnian transits. And you may have a hard time having an identity. Like it could be a little bit of an identity crisis, but like in a good way, because you're not just defining yourself based on who you think you are or who you think you should be, or you're not basing anything on external views. Who are you for you, and having nothing to do with who you are for other people. There's a very famous saying, I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. And it's this whole like perception within a perception kind of thing that is very common with 7th through 12th house transits, especially for 14 years worth. We build up all this, feedback. And now all of a sudden we don't need or want that feedback because that feedback now confuses us. So it's important for you to take the time that you need to be internal and to really ask yourself what's important for you, and to I wouldn't recommend setting forth long-term goals this year because you're still wrapping up the 12th house stuff, which is all about transition. So don't worry about setting these like 10 years from now kind of things. You can set short-term goals, and if there are things that you want, that's fine. But in 2021, when Saturn comes into the first, that's an excellent time for long-term goals, because now you know that you have, 14 years ahead of you where you can really just do what you want for you and not really be concerned about anybody else. And you can lead your family, and you can lead your life, and you can lead your companies and whatever it is you've got in a way that is conducive to how you see fit. And that's empowering. And there will be massive rewards, because Saturn is a planet of rewards. It just takes time and it takes work, and we have to be willing to face the challenges. But at the end of the day, if we go head first into the Saturnian brick walls and we plow through them, we get to the finish line faster. And that finish line is kind of the sense of fulfillment, and to have all-encompassing spirituality and emotional balance and mental cohesion and physical material rewards as well, where all things work together and we are successful in all areas. So you're setting forth new precedents. So it's important that you speak to yourself in a very positive manner, and that you are lenient with yourself throughout 2020. But 2021, at the end of 2020, actually, when that Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, boom, hits Aquarius, it's very exciting. And because it is setting forth these like really, really cool modalities for new ways of expression and communication and creativity and technology and exploration for you as an individual, that's the same for you. How you communicate, how you explore with life. And if you go into this and with a very curious mindset, you will not be disappointed, okay? Absolutely not. So it's a beautiful time for my Aquarian ascendants. All right, see you guys soon. Take care. Hello, Pisces. Okay, let's talk about Saturn. So for you guys, coming in from the 11th house into the 12th house. Now, 12th house is your realm. It's totally your vibe, right? 12th house is magical. We'll talk about it in just a second. But first, I want to rewind the clock a little bit to 2015. Okay, end of 2014, beginning of 2015. At this time, Saturn moved into Sagittarius. Now, why is this important for you guys? Well, Sagittarius is the ruler of your 10th house. And 10th house Saturn is when it's at its most powerful. This is when we really reap the rewards of like 14 years worth of work, okay? It has to do with really like getting the money and the progress in the career and making great strides, and but that's only if you did the work. Now, if you were someone that was maybe struggling during that time, you are not alone. But the only reason for that would be because maybe there were still unresolved things. That's it, right? There were just things that were unresolved, maybe from your family life, from when you were growing up, or a past relationship, or there was just something that kind of outstanding that hadn't been, balanced out yet. And Saturn was like, okay, it's time for you to either progress and take your life to this kind of new realm, this new level, or we need to just sort of fix the problem. So depending on how your 2015, 2016, 2017 really manifested, I suspect there were some really interesting lessons that occurred during that time. And as Saturn entered into Capricorn, which is, again, where he really likes to be, also really loves to be in the 11th house, you were forced to work with people. And that transition from the 10th to the 11th, even though Saturn is very much at home in both, it's just like, it's just kind of one of those, either you were all for it and really ready for the challenge to go out there and work with people, or you may have really withdrawn and you may have turned inward and you may have, felt like there were some setbacks recently and you needed to go internal to really process them. Even though I think Saturn was really wanting you to get out there and to be productive and to work and collaborate in spite of any failures that you perceive to be failures. And now as Saturn comes into the 12th house this year, he's going to undo a lot of things, right? This is the house of the undoing. Some people call it the house of madness because it's like, it can be very maddening, right? It's like Piscean fish just swimming away and they're slippery and you can't grab onto them. And, it's going to be very, very hard to create anything solid during this time because it's not supposed to be created right now for you. Because as Saturn comes into the 12th, your structures and the way you've always done things are starting to get untied. And you're going to really be setting yourself up for a new cycle when Saturn enters into your sign, into Pisces in 2023. And then it's going to make that transition from the 12th house into the first house. And then all the energy is just going to get sucked back in. And you're going to have to go through a lot of internal revisions during that time. So no matter how Saturn in the 10th and 11th house really manifested for you, it doesn't really matter. I mean, we can't turn back the clock. It just is what it is. But it's going to be a good time for you to start being very open to change, like in a really big way. I don't mean change like in a, I'm just gonna, get a new job, or I'm gonna break up with my partner and go find a new one. I mean like real fundamental change, because you're gonna feel a lot of questions popping up over the next couple of years, and you're gonna say, is this really did I really create this? And did I really contribute to this? And is this really what I believe? And is this really what I want? And do I want this path? Do I want that? And all these things that I was looking for the past 30 years, is this really what I want? And sometimes this can feel overwhelming, but because you're Pisces, I think you handle this more naturally than anybody else, which is truly a blessing. And the more fluid and the more flowing and the more open you can be, the better. Okay? So if you didn't really take advantage of your groups and your friends and your networks through the Saturn in Capricorn transit, that's okay. If you were more isolated and more introverted during this time, it might actually be setting you up for a more smooth transition through the first 6 houses as we make our way 2023 and then all the way 14 years plus, okay? Before then when Saturn enters into Virgo, you'll be able to really concentrate on your external world again. But 12th house Saturn is asking you not to think too far ahead. Like, don't think too far ahead. You don't need to set long-term goals. People that try to set these big long-term goals right now will find themselves getting tired and drained, and things won't really stick, and the right people might not really quite show up. And so you really want to set yourself up for success. And the best way is to just acknowledge Saturn's presence in the 12th and say, okay, Saturn, I'm really ready to listen to the universe, because that's what 12th house is all about. It's about the universal oneness and your part in all of this. So any materialistic goals that you have will likely just kind of fizzle out in front of you and just become unimportant, or the more you strive for them, the harder it's going to be to get them. You may have some like idea of grandeur, but it will be like such a far gap between where you are and where you get that there's likely to be discouragement. So the best thing to do is just a day-to-day kind of thing. Short-term goals, week goals, monthly goals, anything longer than that. And I would say, you're kind of playing with fire a little bit. You can still get a lot done during this time. There can be massive rewards here, like really, really massive rewards. It all depends on how you play the game. Okay, you got to play the game by the 12th house rules. The 12th house rules is there are no rules. And Saturn here doesn't have structure the way he normally does. He doesn't have rules and laws and regulations the way he normally does. It just doesn't work here. So you have to be amenable to seeing things from many different angles and to being relaxed on yourself. Sometimes with Saturn in the 12th, we can just push ourselves so hard, and it's so pointless, because whether we push ourselves hard or not, the progress is going to be the same. We're just creating our own unnecessary stress. And why do that? Why do that to ourselves? So you have to let Saturn be free-flowing. You have to let Saturn come undone, and don't expect anything to look the way you think it's going to look. Expect the unexpected. Expect people to do things that are out of character. Expect yourself to do things that are out of character. Expect things that have been your goal for the past 12, 14 years to just not be your goal anymore. And that can be so confusing for people. And people struggle with this sometimes because they're like, wait a second. I had this idea in my mind for like 10 years, and now all of a sudden I don't want it. Then what has all of this been for? It can perpetuate a little bit of an existential crisis, but it's not a big deal. I had to stop my camera for a second because I got a phone call and it totally interrupted the audio. But anyway, so we have this opportunity as Saturn dips into the 12th and then into the 11th again. When it comes to your groups, when it comes to your friends, I think you're going to feel more compelled to make these kinds of network connections. Now, it doesn't have to be your friends per se. It could be within your industry, like doing more professional networking, going out there, building your clientele through referrals, that kind of thing. That will be really beneficial for you, especially if you have not utilized that for the past few years. I really think that Saturn in the 11th can manifest in kind of an extreme way, whether it's a lot of introversion and not wanting to go out with people, or just like kind of doing it a little bit too much or hitting your network a little bit too hard. So for the people who have been, just kind of introverted, now is a time for you to start opening yourself back up. Saturn in the 12th may help to keep you connected with people in a non-advantageous way, like, I actually want to stay connected with people. I actually want to, be united with certain individuals, not because I'm going to get something from them, but because I just feel, that kind of connection or that kind of spiritual connection there. I have to just also say that Saturn through the 12th can kind of help you a lot, because we know that Pisces is so giving, and we know that it's so sacrificial sometimes, and sometimes to its detriment. and it has issues with boundaries. Saturn through the 12th can actually really help with that sometimes, I think. It can help to establish barriers and, help to keep things out that really aren't good, right? Good for you. So that's a benefit there as well. But really, it's a period of rest. It's a period to relax. It's a period to be fluid and to see where the universe pulls you and to be non-judgmental about it. And then when Saturn enters into Pisces, it's like a whole new ball game for you. But we'll talk about that later on. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. All right? Thank you so much. I hope you have an excellent 2020. Take care. Bye-bye.